The future sucks if you think only like a technician and rocks if you think like an entrepreneur. You probably know very well by now that ChatGPT and AI in general is already capturing some jobs.
Faceless has been captured, my lord. Everyone's been captured. I've been captured.
But there are two types of people in this world: those who are acted upon and those who act. Entrepreneurs act. They can't afford to waste time feeling sorry for themselves. They understand that when a wave swells, you can either get buried in it or you can ride it. While some are tempted to focus on the uncertainty, an entrepreneur focuses on the opportunity. And let me tell you, when any new technology comes along, opportunity comes along with it. Take the discovery of electricity, for example. The power of electricity has always existed, but the application of electricity only really started to take hold this last century and is still rapidly expanding to this day. Entrepreneurs took its immense power and then applied it to do cool things like lighting and refrigeration and transportation, heating and cooling, computing, etc. This same principle, in my opinion, applies with AI. We're all so in awe of its sheer power, but can you imagine how many possible applications there will be for AI? It's exhilarating just to think about. ChatGPT is kind of like raw electricity was back before we did anything with it. Entrepreneurs are the ones who'll take its general broad power and then harness it, train it, and apply it to a specific use case. You and I are the ones passionate and knowledgeable about the people we serve. You and I, the entrepreneurs of the world, are the ones who will harness its power in unique, clever, and lucrative ways. For example, general broad ChatGPT might not be very useful on a vacation website, but a trained AI with specific instructions and specific parameters would be super useful. Like, what if there were a simple little app called Travel Roulette, which allows adventurers to input a few details about their next trip, like where they're from, what their budget is, what vibe they're going for, and what their travel party is, and bam, the AI then intelligently suggests their next vacation custom tailored to them. Now that's pretty useful. And in this video, in 36 minutes flat, or 18 minutes if you watch it at 2x speed, does anybody else do that or is it just me? I'm going to teach you how to do exactly that, step by step. Oh, and if you want to just sit back, watch, and learn, you totally can, because if you click the link below, I'll give you my fully finished app template of Travel Roulette, totally free, just for watching with me to the end. You can go ahead and use it as is. You can modify it into your own version of this app or whatever else you want. Totally free. Now, in my last video, that was a little bit more about speed, and I appreciated all your comments. That was more of a quick build connected to ChatGPT and not much more than that, which was cool. But in this video, I'll give you the goods. Okay, timer starts now. Let's dive in. All right, let's do this. So the first thing you want to do is go to bubble.io. If you don't have an account yet, click my link below and that'll get you $15 off your first paid plan. I already have an account. I'm just going to make a new app and I'm going to call it Travel Roulette Demo or something like that. For this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and skip the application assistant, get out of their get started stuff. I'm going to go to the layout tab. I'm going to make this a column container and say the width is 450 pixels wide. And what we're doing is we're going to be stacking groups on top of each other. So it's going to be quite tall. Let's just say like 2,500 pixels tall or something for now. We can change that later. Now, for our logo, let's go down to one of my apps, my favorite app for design. It's called Logoist 4 for Mac. And this is the template I'm using. You might have thought I was a great graphic designer. I just know how to fake it till I make it. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go ahead and just change that text, Travel Roulette. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to grab that text, shrink it on down a little bit, give it a little bit of a tilt, maybe bump it up and to the left a little bit, something like that, and we are good to go. Now, I have more in-depth tutorial on this software in my course. If you're interested in that, click the link below. I'm gonna go ahead and export this thing as an SVG file. SVG can be scaled as big or as small as you want without losing any of the image quality. Now, how big was this thing? If we go to edit artboard, it was 650 pixels wide by 400 tall. So that's important. Let's go and grab an image element and I'm going to make it, if we go to the layout, I'm going to keep the element aspect ratio fixed and I'm literally going to say 650 by 400. That's the ratio we want. Now we can go to the appearance and upload what we just downloaded. like so. Now let's go to the layout. We can bump that width up a little bit. I'm just holding the shift key and pushing the up arrow. Let's center this thing. Let's give it maybe a little bit of top margin, like 15 or so. Now we want the background of our app to match this cream, beige, tan, whatever color it is. So let's go to this little eyedropper plugin. It's a plugin I downloaded from the Google Chrome store. There's tons of them. Doesn't really matter which one you pick, but I'm using this one. I'm gonna pick a color from Page and find that cream color, copy it to my clipboard, and now if I come to the background of the page, I can insert that color so it blends nicely. All right, now for this app, as I showed you, there will be where do you live, what is your budget, what is your vacation type, and what's your travel party, and then the answer. So that's 5 different groups that will show and hide depending on where we're at. So let's scroll up here. Let's grab a group element. I'm going to throw it onto the page here. I'm going to go ahead and call this group location. I'm going to make this a column container. I'm going to center it. I'm going to uncheck fixed width, get rid of minimum width for now. Make the height 400 for now. I'm going to grab a text element, drop it in, and just say, where do you live? I'm going to go to the layout, center this, uncheck fixed width, get rid of minimum width, get rid of minimum height, go to the appearance, detach the style, center this thing, go to layout, give myself 40 pixels of breathing room on top. I can go ahead and fit the width to the content itself. And I personally, for this use case, like the font Backback or Bok, however you pronounce that. I'm going to grab an input element. I'm going to throw that in here. I'm going to make the width and height, let's say 215 by 75, something like that. I'm going to center this thing. I'm going to give it 20 breathing room on top. I'm going to go to the appearance tab, detach the style. I'm going to go here, center this. I'm going to give it that Bok Backback font. Let's make this thing like 25 pixels in size. Let's make our font color this red of this circle. So let's go here and grab that color. Boom, there we go. Now we can paste that in there. Cool, next I'm going to copy and paste. This will be called input city, and this will be called input state. Now I'm going to grab a text element, throw it on here. I might as well make it the same dimensions as this thing, 215 by 75, 215 by 75. Let's center this thing. Now this text element is serving as a button. Let's give this thing 50 pixels on top and 50 on bottom. Let's go to the appearance. Let's center the text. Let's give that line spacing 1. Let's center the text vertically. Let's detach the style, give it that Bok color. We'll make it white. Let's give the background a flat color of our red that we copied. Let's call this button next. And to do a little right arrow, just FYI, is open bracket, FA, close bracket, arrow dash right, open bracket slash FA. And now we have a little right arrow. Now, lastly, this is type here. I don't like that. I'm going to say city. And for this, I'm going to say state. And I was wrong. I think I want to make this a little bit smaller. So let's go something like 130 by 40. Sorry about that. Now, the nice thing is we have copy and paste. I'm going to copy and paste this for the next group, which when the page loads is going to be hidden. So let's go ahead and uncheck visibility on page load and collapse its height when it's hidden, so it doesn't take up space, right? Let's change this group's name that we just copied to now. It's going to be group budget. And this is only going to be one input, so delete that. Let's go here and say budget. And budget is not text. It is a currency. $sign is fine for me. And initially I'll say $500 as a good starting point. Now, obviously this is not where we live. This is enter your total budget. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that group. Come on down here. And this one will be choose a vacation type. Now I'm going to delete the budget input. And for this, if I wanted, I could just grab 4 group elements and throw them on here to represent each of the 4 types. Or because these are 4 of the same type of thing repeated, I can grab something called a repeating group and drop that in here. And for this simple use case, it's going to be 2 rows, 2 columns. I'm going to the layout real quick. I'm going to uncheck fixed width, get rid of minimum width. I'm going to give this a top margin of 40. And now we have the same type of item repeated, right? But if we go back to the appearance, it's looking for a type of content and a data source. What does that even mean? Well, again, this repeating group is showing the 4 different vacation types that we're offering. So let's make that. And to do that, let's go to the data tab and go to an option set. Let's skip the tutorial for now, and we will call this vacation types. And our 4 vacation types are beach, city, countryside, and mountain. Awesome. Now that we have that option set, we can come back to our repeating group and say the type of content that we're repeating is vacation type. The data source is just all of them, all the vacation types we just made. Cool. Now inside of each cell, let's grab a group and drop it in. And let's go ahead and say, hey, this repeating group isn't a fixed container. We want it to be a column container. And now let's go ahead and go to our group we just dropped in. Let's say you need to be an aligned to parent container. And I'll show you why here in just a second. Let's uncheck fixed width, get rid of minimum width, get rid of minimum height. We'll uncheck fit height to content so it spans the whole vertical space. Let's give this inside of this square a little bit of padding. So we'll say 20, 20, 20, and 20 all around. Now let's grab a text element here. And this is the benefit of using an aligned to parent container. We can go to the layout tab and say we want the text to be on the bottom middle. And now let's uncheck fixed width, get rid of minimum width, get rid of minimum height. Fit height to content's fine. Fit width to content is fine. And what do we want it to say? Well, we want this text to say whatever the vacation type is, right? And the nice thing about repeating groups is you can just design it once for one cell, and then it will repeat for every cell, but just inherit the data of that cell. So let's go ahead and highlight this thing, insert dynamic data, and say the parent group's data type thing. Well, why does it say thing? Well, that's my fault. I got to go here and I got to say the type of content for this group is, again, vacation types, and the data source is just the current cell, right? So there's lots of cells of this repeating group. It's just the current one we're viewing currently. So now if I come back to this piece of text, it'll say the parent group's vacation types display. Now, I don't want the text to go all the way out, so let's go ahead and just say uncheck fixed width to content. Let's go to the appearance and detach the style and center this thing as well. So we've got the name of each vacation type, but it would be nice to have some sort of a visual or a graphic, right? So to do that, let's grab an image element, and I'm going to drop that image element here in the center. And this image element is just a simple icon. So it can be 50 pixels tall, 50 pixels wide, and I'm going to just fix those as well. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to say right now this is not visible on page load. I want it to be visible on page load just temporarily so I can preview it. So I'm going to hit that preview button and I'm going to come down here and I see beach, city, countryside, mountain. Nice. I'm going to get out of debug mode real quick and I'm going to right click and inspect. And if you're using Google Chrome, there's this really cool tool. If you come to this computer and phone icon here and click on it, it allows you to visualize your app on different screen sizes, which is pretty cool. So let's just go ahead and use iPhone SE. Let's scroll down. And as you can see, we've got beach, city, countryside, mountain. But we need the image. Why is it not showing? Well, because we haven't really told it where to grab its data, where to grab its image source, right? So let's go back, remember, to that option set we made. And every single one has a name, but we also want every single option to have an image. So let's create a new attribute and call it image, and then make that of type image and click create. Now, if we hit modify attributes, we can upload an image for each of those options. Now, I personally love something called icons8.com. It's amazing. It has a lot of great free images. It's so great that I actually have it downloaded to my computer. So I'm just going to open up the Icons 8 app itself on my Mac. And let's go ahead and just search for a beach. And I'm okay with this one, this black and white one. So I'm literally just going to drag it in and hit save. Let's go to the city. I'm going to just type in the word city. And I'm okay with maybe something like that. I don't know. We'll upload that and hit save. Let's go to countryside. I'll type in the word countryside. And sure, this farmland picture is good. I'll save that. Let's go to the mountain one. I'll type in the word mountain. And sure, we'll do that one now. And hit save. Now, if we come to demo this thing, and refresh. Let's scroll down and it's still not showing anything. Why? Well, because we have to map that image to a data source. So do we want the same exact image repeated every single time? No, we want a dynamic changing image depending on what cell we're viewing, right? So let's insert dynamic data and let's say we want to grab the parent group's vacation types image. Now, if we come back and refresh, if we come down, we've got some nice images there. Awesome. Now we can come back and remember I temporarily said this can be visible on page load. Let's uncheck that because we don't want it visible on page load. We also want to change that name. Sorry, this will be vacation type. Cool. Now I'm just going to copy that whole thing and paste that whole thing. And this next one is for travel party. So what are we going to do? Well, you guessed it. Let's make another option set called travel party. And our 4 options for this simple example will be alone, as a couple, as a family with children, with a group will be our last one. Same thing, we're going to want an image associated with each option. Let's go to our trusty Icons 8 app, and maybe for alone we could just say traveler. Cool, I like this one. Let's go ahead and modify the attributes here, grab that traveler, throw him in there, hit save. For as a couple, we'll just type couple. Sure, throw that in there, that's fine. As a family with children, we can type in family, children, something like that. Sure, whatever, hit save. With a group, we can type in people. Sure, something like that is fine. Hit save. Let's go to our design tab and just temporarily to make sure everything's working, let's go ahead and go to layout and make it yes visible on page load. Now let's change this data source because right now it's going to vacation types. This is not vacation types, this is travel party. So we'll say all of the travel party options we just barely made. Let's go to this group and say this is not vacation types, this is travel party. Let's go here and yep, travel party's image. And yep, travel party's display, cool. Let's preview it by refreshing, scroll down, and yes, it looks all right, great. Now let's go back here and go to this group and say, yep, sorry, you need to not be visible on page load. That was just a temporary thing. And since this is our last option, maybe we could say something like finish. Awesome, and then let's go ahead and just copy and paste one more time. And this one, let's just delete this whole repeating group. And for this button, maybe we could say like restart because this is the final screen they're seeing. And I could just get rid of this stuff here. And this, since it's not a title, it's actually the answer from ChatGPT. Maybe we could change this to like an open sans font. Let's left align it. Let's go to layout. Let's left align this text. Let's uncheck fit width to content. And we don't want this text to go all the way to the left and right. We want to give this group a little bit of padding. So maybe we go to layout and just say this group can have some padding of 30, 30, 30, and 30 all around. And let's change the name of this group to group answer. Cool. Now, as for design, I think we're pretty much there. The only thing we might need still is just like a simple back button. So now I'm going to right click and I'm going to group this thing in an align to parent container. Now I'm going to go ahead and uncheck fit width to content. I'm going to allow this thing to be centered. And now I'm going to grab an icon element, drop it right here and say left. And this can serve as our like back button. I'm going to make this 50 pixels tall by 50 pixels wide. Maybe we'll make it that same red color we've been using. And as for design, I think we are pretty much there. Let's go ahead and refresh and see what we're working with. We have a tall page now. It's too tall. Let's go ahead and come here. And now we can double click on the page and go to layout and just get rid of that minimum height. We can just totally delete it. And now it will just inherit the height of whatever it needs to be, right? Now, since this where do you live is the very first page they see, there is no need to show the back button because there's nowhere back to go. So let's go ahead and go to the travel roulette. Let's go here. Let's say collapse when hidden, uncheck visibility on page load. And where do we want this and where do we don't want this? Well, when this thing is visible, when group location is visible, we don't want it. And I guess we don't really want it when the answer is visible because they have this restart button. So maybe we'll say, let's go up to the very top and say, normally you're invisible, but on condition, let's define a condition and say if group location is not visible, And if group answer is not visible, then I do want this to be visible in every other case. Let's go ahead and come back here, refresh, and now it's not visible in this case, which is good. Awesome. Now, what do we want to have happen when they click the word next? Let's right click and start the workflow for when they click. What do we want to do? Well, we want to hide this, right? And we want to show this next step, right? So let's do that. Let's just say hide group location, and we could say show group budget, but I personally like to add a little pizzazz to the app, right? So let's say animate group budget, and let's animate it in from the right. So we'll say no bounce right in. And I personally like to make it nice and quick and snappy, so I make it 400 millisecond duration. Let's give that a test. And if I say Idaho Falls, Idaho, and hit next, boom, it animated in. But as you can see, even though the group is invisible, the height of the group is still there. Well, oops, let's go back here, and click here and go to layout and say, we want this to be collapsed when hidden. And now we can try it, and I'll say Idaho Falls, Idaho, my hometown, by the way. And if I hit next, boom, now it looks better. Awesome. Now let's work on this workflow for the back button. If I'm clicking here and nothing's happening. Why? Well, because we haven't made a workflow for it. So let's go here, right click, start its workflow for when it is clicked. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to hide group budget, right? Because that's the one that's visible now. And we want to animate group location back in. Coming from where? Well, from the left side. My favorite is no bounce left in. Let's define a custom duration, say 400 milliseconds. Let's give that a shot. Let's refresh. I say blah, blah, blah. I hit next. It looks good, but then I go back and that looks good as well. Awesome. Well, now let's go to the design tab. We've got that done. Now let's do the workflow for this button click. When the next button inside of group budget gets clicked, we want to hide group budget and show group vacation type. So let's do that. Let's right click, start the workflow. We will hide an element, group budget, and we will animate in another one, group vacation type. And let's animate it from the right. So again, no bounce right in. That's my favorite. We'll make it 400 milliseconds. Let's give that a test. Throw in gibberish here just for our test. And yes, it's looking good. Awesome. Now, if I hit the back button, as you can see, it's showing group location and it's still showing group vacation type. Why? Well, because right now, our back button arrow is only linked to when we're here, not when we're here, right? So we need both to be set up. So how do we do that? Well, let's right click and start the workflow and say, this thing is special. It's going to do different actions depending on different scenarios. So let's go ahead and say, only do this when group budget is the one that's currently visible. But let's right click and copy and right click and paste and say, if by chance group vacation type is visible, we'll say if group vacation type is visible, in that case, we're not hiding group budget anymore. It's already hidden. We're hiding group vacation type. And in this case, we're showing group budget because that's the preceding group, right? So now let's come here, refresh, give that a shot. Boom, boom. Awesome. Now that goes back there. If we come forward again, now we go back and group budget is the one that shows, and that's as expected. Awesome. Cool. Let's just keep on going. Let's go to design tab. Let's say, what if we click the next button for group vacation type? Right click, start the workflow. We will hide group vacation type. We will animate in group travel party. From the right, no bounce right in, make that a 400 duration. Awesome, looking good. Give this thing a test, hit next, awesome. How about the finish? And actually, even more than the finish, what about actually selecting these things? Why is nothing happening when I select or click on any of these things? If I hit back, nothing is happening here either. Well, let's hurry and do that. The back button real quick. Let's say if the back button is clicked, right now we have these two, And just for simplicity's sake, I like to color these things. So let's just say when that red back button is clicked, color these workflows red. Let's right click and copy, right click and paste, and say when group travel party is visible, we want something else to happen. We want to hide group travel party, and we want to show group vacation type. Nice. Let's refresh. So we got our city state. We got our next buttons. They're working. The back buttons seem to be working. Great. Now, what if I click on beach? I want to save that I clicked on beach. How do I save that? Well, there's many ways to do this. You could save it to the database, but that's really not important enough to save because we haven't even hit the final submit button yet. So there's this cool way of saving something called custom states. So let's go here and let's just double click on the page itself. I personally like to store my custom states on the page. And the way to get there is you hit this little eye icon, and I'm going to add a new one. And I'm just going to say saved travel party or something like that. And that will be of type travel party, the option set we made, remember? And let's click create. And then let's make that other one called saved vacation type. And that will be of type vacation type. Again, it's that option set we just created. And that will allow us to temporarily save an option on the page. So let's do that workflow. So if I click on the beach, I want it to save the beach, right? So let's right click and start the workflow for when they click on a cell inside my vacation types repeating group. Let's go ahead and say set the state of an element. What element are we setting the state of? On the page itself. The page is named index. Now the custom state is the saved vacation type. Which one? Well, it's just whatever the current cell that they're clicking on, right? So that's what we're saving. Awesome. Let's try it. Let's refresh and we'll say blah, 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 blah. And then when I click on beach, nothing's happening. Well, guess what? Technically, it is happening. It did save, but I want to visually see that too, right? So let's go back here and to the design tab and let's visually show it. Let's say that this group normally has no borders, but on condition where the current cell that we're viewing, when it is the same as what we just saved on the page, and the name of the page is index, and that custom state, that saved vacation type, when they match, well, then we do want the border. We'll say the border style can be a solid border, and we'll say the border width can be like 2, and the border color can be maybe like our red that we've been using. Let's refresh the page here. Let's throw in our gibberish to see. And now if I click on city, as you can see, city is selected. If I click on countryside, now countryside is selected, etc., 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 right? Awesome. Now let's do the same thing for the vacation type. Let's go back to our vacation type repeating group, right click, start the workflow for when they click and say, let's go ahead and set the state of the page of the travel party to be whatever I just clicked on, the current cell I'm tapping on. Awesome. And we also want to change that condition, but oops, sorry, I just noticed something. This is vacation type and this is also vacation type. My bad. This is not. This is a travel party. Cool. And now we can come here and we can say, normally this appearance here is no border, but on condition where the page index, where it's saved travel party, is the same thing as this current cell's travel party, well then in that case, we want the border style to be a solid border, the border color to be our red that we like, and our border width can be like a 2 or something like that. Let's refresh and test. Always test. Let's throw in some data. Awesome. Looks good. Awesome. That all looks good. Hit next. Awesome. That all looks good as well. Now let's work on the finish button workflow. Let's come back here and let's say, right click, start the workflow. When someone clicks finish, what do we want to do? Well, let's go ahead and hide that travel party group and let's show like a loading animation, visual something while they're waiting for ChatGPT to calculate its answer. So to do that, we want something to kind of pop up above everything else. And a group that would float above everything else is called a floating group. I'm going to drop that on the page. I'm going to go to layout. I'm going to uncheck fixed width, make that a column container, uncheck, get rid of minimum width, get rid of minimum height, uncheck fit height to content so it spans the full height of the page. We can go ahead and make it that same cream color. What was our cream color? This F1E8C8. I'm going to copy that, come back to this floating group, and I'm going to go to that background and paste that same cream color. We can give this thing some padding, maybe like 30, 30, 30, 30. And I'm a fan of the LottieFiles.com animations, LottieFiles.com. Go there, find something you like. I already found one I like, so I'm going to install a plugin called Lottie Animations Maintained. I'm going to install that, hit done. I'm going to come to the design tab, throw in that Lottie animation element that I just installed. Let's go to layout. This thing can be 300 pixels wide by 200 pixels tall. Let's center it. Like I said, I already downloaded the file I like from LottieFiles.com. I'm going to throw that in here. You can get whatever file you want. And I'm going to throw in just a piece of text that says, "Finding your perfect destination." I'm going to detach the style, center this thing. I'm going to give it that back font. I'm going to go to layout, center it, give it maybe like 30 on top, and that's fine for a loading page. Now, let's go to the appearance and say, we really do want this thing to be relative to both the top and the bottom, so it completes the whole page. And we'll rename this to floating group loading. Normally, we don't want it covering up all of our stuff. So normally it's not visible on page load, which is good. So let's go ahead and just visually hide it for a second. Scroll down to that finish button. Let's start its workflow again and say we want to animate that loading page we just barely made up. So we'll say up in, no bounce up in. We'll say 400 again. And let's just see what that looks like real quick. Refresh, throw in our gibberish, boom, boom. And there we go. We have our nice loading animation. So what do we want to do? Well, remember, the whole reason we're showing this loading is so ChatGPT can calculate its answer. How do we get ChatGPT to calculate its answer? Well, let's go to the plugin store and let's add a plugin that I built, you're welcome, called ChatGPT by NoCode Advantage. Go ahead and hit install and done. This will make it a lot easier for you to connect to ChatGPT. And you're definitely going to want real quick to go to platform.openai.com. I'm already logged in and have an account. If you don't, be sure to make one. Go into the very top right and say view API keys. You're definitely going to want to have an API key. So I'm going to create one and I'm going to say test key, delete later. Don't worry, if you try to steal my key, it will have been deleted by now. So I'm going to copy that thing. I'm going to go back into Travel Roulette. And what we're going to put here is bearer space and then paste that key. And same thing here. We can do it for the test version as well. Awesome. Now, if you go to the workflow tab, remember that finish button workflow, we're going to go ahead and say Chat GPT question. Now, I already have the TravelBot prompts ready to roll. The initial training, the GPT confirmation, the model, I'm using GPT-4. You can use whatever you want. Now, really the only thing I'm going to be manipulating is this last one here. I'm going to insert dynamic data, and just because I don't like typing a big long paragraph on a one-line input, I'm just going to simply say arbitrary text, and the only reason I'm doing that is so I can type on a multi-line input. It's just a little easier for me. Now, be sure to put this in quotes. Just the API likes quotes. I don't know why. I'm going to say, hello, comma, I live in blah, 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 and have a total budget of blah, blah, blah. I'm seeking a blank destination. I'm traveling blank, blank, blank. Can you please give me a good recommendation for my next vacation? Now, why did I put those blanks? Well, because this is where we're inserting dynamic data based on whatever your users put in those inputs, right? So let's go ahead and say, I live in where? Now, what is that? If we go back to Design tab, let's go up here, and remember, they have the city and the state. This is called input city, and this is called input state. So we're literally just going to grab from whatever they put there. So let's go and say, I live in insert dynamic data. I live in input city. Oh, there's two input cities. That's my fault. Sorry. Let's go see where they are. This first one is this, and where's the other one? It's this. Aha, my bad. I need to name things better. Input budget is that one. Now let's go back to the workflow and say, I live in input cities value. And then I also want to put a comma, space, insert dynamic data. And we want to say input states value. And maybe you'd like to put country or whatever. Feel free to change that in your app. I have a total budget of input budgets value. I'm seeking and remember, these repeating groups aren't really necessarily designed as inputs. So we saved the choice that the user selected, remember, on the page's custom state, if you remember that, right? So let's go back to the workflow and say, I'm seeking a insert dynamic data, whatever the page's name, index, saved vacation types, display, right? So I'm seeking a mountain destination or beach destination or whatever type of destination they're seeking. I'm traveling, and maybe it could be alone or as a couple or whatever. Remember, that is saved on the page named index, its custom state called travel party, and its display. Awesome. Now let's hit close, and we've got ourselves a dynamic prompt, my friends. Now, lastly, we want to display the answer that ChatGPT gives us back, right? So we are hitting the bit button finish. We're displaying this loading group. We're going to want to hide this loading group and show what? This answer group. Now, this answer group right now has no data type or content. And right now it literally just says choose a vacation type, static text. We don't want it to say that every single time. We want it to be dynamic. We want it to be whatever ChatGPT says. Well, how do we know what it says? Well, we're going to have to do that in the workflow, but regardless of what it says, we're going to display it here in this group answer. So what is it going to say back? Text. So the type of content is text. The data source is empty for now because ChatGPT hasn't yet responded. But when it does, we'll be ready to inherit that parent group's text on this element. Cool. So let's go back to that workflow now and say we want to show group answer. We want to display ChatGPT's answer in group answer. What text data do we want to display? Well, whatever ChatGPT said back. How do we know where to get that from? Well, it's in step 3, remember? So let's say the result of step 3's, it's inside the choices category. We'll say last item, and we'll say message content. Cool. And so once we have group answer showing and supporting the data of the answer, now let's just hide that loading group, remember? So let's animate it out. We'll say animate that loading group out. So we'll say down, out, no bounce, down, out. We'll do it a little faster and snappier. 400, and we almost have ourselves an app. Now, because this workflow is so mission critical, I'm going to just make it green. Why? I don't know, but it works for me. Okay, so let's come in here and refresh. I'm going to say Idaho Falls, Idaho, $500 budget, awesome, beach vacation, next, alone is fine, finish, and I've got my loading screen going. ChatGPT is thinking, is it going to work? Cross your fingers. Come on, baby. Yes, it is. California's Huntington Beach. Great. Now, what about when we click the restart button? Let's go here, go to Design tab, right click, start the workflow, and we will say hide the answer group and show the original group. What was that original group called? Oh yeah, this group location. So we will show group location. Let's just make sure that works. Let's just throw in New York City, New York. Let's just daydream for a second. Let's say my budget is $1 million, leaving New York. I'm going for a beach destination. I'm traveling as a family. I hit finish. And what's it going to suggest for me? The Maldives. Nice. Okay, I'm a fan of that. Maybe someday. Now, I don't like how much gap spacing there is between the logo and the answer, so let's hurry and fix that. Let's go to Design tab. Let's say this thing can have a lot less spacing. We'll come up and just get rid of that 40. But guess what, my friends? We have ourselves an app. Appreciate you watching. All right, there you have it. There's your fully finished build. And remember, if you'd like my totally free template so you don't have to do this all yourself from scratch, feel free to grab that for free at the link below. Now you've got your own AI-powered app primed and ready to follow your own custom instructions. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until then, happy building.